Hello, beautiful people, happy humans, welcome. If you've never caught me live before, I would love to connect with you. I'd love to know you, so go ahead and whether you're live or watching the replay, let me know your name and where you are watching from below in the comments so that we can connect with one another and I can get to know you a little bit. So let me know your name and where you're from. Welcome. My name is Dana. I am the founder of Thrive with Dana. And I want to talk about creating an extraordinary life today because I think everybody wants an extraordinary life on a visceral core level. All of us want to live an exceptional and extraordinary life and to do something amazing with our life. But a lot of people settle for mediocre. And I want to talk about why. I want to talk about why this happens. And I also want to talk about my own story of almost settling for mediocre and what it has taken and what it really requires of us to move into the extraordinary, the exceptional with our life. So I'm nervous, I'm excited, and it's been a while since I've been live on here, and a lot of things have changed in my life recently. A lot of new things have been put on my heart as part of my calling, and because of that, I am stepping into a lot of unknown territory, and there's a lot of fear with that newness. Newness comes with fear of the unknown. When we step into a place where things are no longer predictable because we cannot understand or comprehend what will come because we are no longer operating from a place that we have been operating from, where we were getting a certain result because we were living a specific way and the outcome was predictable because we felt like we had this control, this illusion of control over our life. When we finally say that prayer of I'm ready for more, and with that prayer comes a level of readiness that we're claiming of ourselves, a level of readiness to step into unknown territory, a level of readiness to do things that we've never done before, to become someone who we've never been before in order to make it happen. And with that, there is a level of doubt and a level of uncertainty. So if you're in a place where you are grappling with doubt, uncertainty, in God's plan for you, in your calling, in whether you can make this happen, in whether you can make this work, if this is the thing that you're supposed to be doing, how you're supposed to do it, this is the perfect place to be. And maybe you've had success. Maybe you're at a place where you have achieved a lot of incredible things, and yet you're still feeling called to more. And there's this feeling of like, when is it going to be enough? Like, what is really going to be required of me? I'm terrified. I'm scared. And that's okay. This is the perfect place to be to have this conversation. So there was a time where I was living a pretty mediocre life. And when I think about the word mediocre, I get kind of curious. I love words. I love the root of words. I think there's so much that can come from just taking one word and looking at where it originated from. And this word mediocre caught my attention today. And so I found myself thinking about the word mediocre and how nobody wants to live a mediocre life. And I was like, well, what does it mean? What does it actually mean to live a mediocre life? If we're going to talk about creating an extraordinary life, if we're going to talk about moving beyond the mundane, moving beyond the mediocre, we also have to have a conversation of what does it mean to get stuck there? What is it to live a mediocre life? And when I looked up the root of this word, mediocre, I found out that medius is the first part of the origin of that Latin word, which is medius, and it means middle. And ocris means rugged mountain. And this is where we get the word mediocre, the middle of the rugged mountain. The middle of the rugged mountain. And I kind of smiled when I realized that that's where mediocre comes from, the middle of the rugged mountain. Because most people will try. They have the ambition and the will to try to create an extraordinary life. But a lot of us get stuck in the middle of the rugged mountain. We make it so far, and then we reach this threshold where we feel like we have no control and we cannot see anything that's on the other side. and we have no idea how we're going to get to the summit. And so we just stop and we set up camp in the middle of the rugged mountain. Yes, we have faced trials. Yes, we have faced tribulations, and we've made it this far. And we know that there's a calling for more. We know that we want to keep going. But because of the trials and the tribulations that we've faced and the uncertainty of what it will take for us to move to the next summit, we just set up base camp and we stop. So living a mediocre life isn't never trying. A lot of us do. We try. We want more. We call more. And we're like, I want to live an extraordinary life. And so we get started, and we start to climb this rugged mountain, and we face challenges, we face obstacles. And to live a mediocre life isn't to not get started. It's to stop halfway up the rugged mountain and say, I can't go any further. I don't know how to go any further. This is it. I'm just going to stop here. I've faced so much. I've done so much in my life, and I can't handle another heartbreak. I can't handle another thing not going my way. I can't handle another health issue. I can't handle another rejection. I can't face another financial catastrophe. I can't do it. It was so scary that first time, and facing it got me here, but I don't think I can go any further. This is it. And so we stop and we settle in the middle of the rugged mountain. And we say, I can't go anymore. That's what it means to live a mediocre life. So there's many times in my life that I can remember wanting to just stop and say, this is enough. Like, I can't do anymore. And it seems like, from my personal experience, every time that I've reached a threshold where God is about to open up completely new doors for me, completely new chapters of my life, where He is about to bring the most extraordinary relationships in my life, where He is about to bring me opportunities that are beyond my comprehension, where things are about to change so dramatically in an instant that I could have never orchestrated from my limited human perspective. Right before that happens, this moment seems to come for me. This moment of, why don't I just quit everything and go get a regular job? Why don't I just go live alone in the mountains and not have to deal with intimacy and these uncomfortable conversations with loved ones? I'll be fine alone in isolation. I start to believe the lies of the enemy, and I start to want to settle for a mediocre life. I want to stop in the middle of the rugged mountain. And it's always right there that is the most terrifying, because it's on the edge of something that is beyond what I have ever known before and beyond what I can possibly see as available to me from where I am in my limited human perspective. And this reminded me of a story in the Word. There is this really powerful moment where Jesus is speaking to His disciples about the end times. And it's so powerful because there are over 170 women mentioned in the Bible by name. But during this one particular moment where Jesus is really wanting to land the message of, this is what is going to be required of you. This is what is coming, and here's who you need to become to make it through. In Luke chapter 17, verse 32, He mentions, remember Lot's wife. Out of all of the women that He could have mentioned, He brings up Lot's wife. And it got me thinking about the story of Lot's wife. And so I went digging deeper, and I was like, what happened to Lot's wife? Why is Lot's wife mentioned here as this warning? And the story of Lot's wife is in Genesis chapter 19. And what's happening is angels have come to warn this family that the town of Sodom and Gomorrah is going to fall, that it is going to be destroyed, that everything that they have ever known is going to be wiped away in an instant, that their life as they know it is about to completely change, and that there's no going back, and that it's going to be total destruction. And there's resistance. They say, oh, but Lord, why? Like, I don't want to leave. even though my life here is mediocre, even though this is the middle of the rugged mountain, I don't know what's on the other side, and I'm not willing to let this go. But the angels say, you need to leave. Sodom and Gomorrah is going to be no more. There's going to be total destruction here. And as they flee this city, Lot's wife looks back. She looks back on her life, everything that it is that she was clinging to, all of the things that she's unwilling to let go to move forward, and she turns into a pillar of salt. And this is the warning that Jesus gives his disciples in Luke chapter 17, verse 32. He says, remember Lot's wife. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how so many of us are so attached to the stories of what got us to the middle of the mountain. Everything that it took for us to just climb the trials, the tribulations, the obstacles that we had to face, the relationships, the heartbreak, the financial issues, the health issues, the mental health issues, everything that it took for us to just get to the middle of the mountain, that we're struggling to think if we're even capable of achieving going to the summit. And so we stop and we cling to all of the experiences of the past, all of the broken relationships from the past, all of the heartbreak, all of the pain, all of the suffering. We cling to all of that. And even though it's not what we want for ourselves, we tell ourselves a story that is only what's possible for us. And so it's better to just settle in the middle of the mountain than it is to keep going to the summit. We would rather cling to the past of what has happened to us than allow God to purify our heart and open us to the potentiality of what's possible through the callings that he has put within us. And so we stop there. We settle for the mediocre, the middle of the rugged mountain. And we just say, okay, this is it. This is all I can do. I can't go any further. I'm going to just set up base camp here. I don't want to move forward. I don't want to let go of what I have known in order to open myself up to what's possible, because it would require of me the sacrifice of my old life. It would require of me the sacrifice of my old identity. It would require of me a level of faith that I've never had before, and I am unwilling. There was a time where this was my life. I had been living a very kind of monotonous life of settling in the middle for a long time, a decade. I had gone through my own trials and tribulations that had led me to that middle of the mountain. I had gone through heartbreak, broken engagements. I had gone through my own stories of trauma and experiences of having my psyche, my mind, and my body violated. And I made that mean I have to just settle for this middle of the mountain, the mediocre. This is good enough because it's better than what I have had. And so therefore it is enough. I don't need to aspire to more. I just need to tuck myself away underneath someone else's wing in a place that it's safe, in a place that I'm sheltered. And I need to just ride the coattails of others. I need to just deal with the relationships that I have. I just need to people please, overgive, keep the people in my life that I have in my life, even if they're not necessarily a good fit for me, even if we're not necessarily elevating each other to our highest potential. You know, I'm okay with binge drinking on the weekends. I'm okay with taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. I'm okay with being numb. I'm okay with dissociating. I'm okay with not being in my body. I'm okay with living this life where I'm trading time for others, doing things that I don't want to do, dealing with crappy bosses just to get a paycheck. I'm okay with this because it's better than what I had. And so I settled there for a long period of time. An extended period of my life was there in the middle of the rugged mountain. I was like, okay, well, I made it to this summit and this is good enough. I don't need to go any further. Mediocre is good. Mediocre is good because it's not as painful as what I've experienced in the past. And the problem with being there was the feeling of discontent, the lack of peace, the constant knowing that I was meant for more. The constant knowing that I had a calling that was far bigger than the life that I was living. And there was a constant feeling of discontent. There was no peace Even if I had, an abundance of money in my bank account, even if I had a lot of relationships in my life, there was a feeling of discontent. There was no peace. There was a quote that my pastor said recently in church that really struck a chord in my heart. And he was speaking about anxiety, and it had me reflecting on this time in my life where I had so much anxiety. I struggled to even leave my house without being high or drinking because I had so much anxiety in social interactions that I had to be dissociated from my body to interact with others. I had to be completely masked, and in order to feel safe enough to have human interaction. And I was thinking about that time in my life when he said this quote. He said, "A palace of gold will become a penitentiary without peace." A palace of gold will become a penitentiary without peace. And I thought, wow, that is so true. I have been there. I have been in a palace of gold that was a penitentiary, where my life looked really great from the outside looking in. It looked like I had it all. And yet, because I did not have peace, I was incapable of receiving God's promise of true prosperity. No matter how much money was in my bank account, no matter how many likes and follows I had, no matter how many followers I had, no matter all of the beautiful clothes in my closet that I had, didn't matter. None of that actually mattered, because without peace, I could not have true prosperity. I had settled for mediocre. I was in the middle of the rugged mountain. God was calling me for more, and my soul would never have peace if I did not listen to that calling. If I did not have the obedience to leave behind everything that I had known before in order to step into a level of my own potentiality that God had put me here for. It required of me sacrifice, not animal sacrifice or blood sacrifice. These actually, I learned recently that there was a Greek little g god called Pan that used to be worshipped, and it was a goat. It was like this little goat. There's still a statue and a mound and a place of ritual to this day where they used to go and sacrifice babies, animals on the altar of this little g god Pan. And this is where the concept of pantheism comes from. And that is actually the root word of panic. It's the worship of a pseudo god, Pan, the goat, with sacrifice. It's this constant sacrifice of things that are never going to actually please God. Things that are never actually going to get us to where we want to go. And that made so much sense to me. I was constantly trying to sacrifice my time, my energy, my true authentic self. I was trying to sacrifice all of these things in order to achieve these worldly possessions, in order to receive more money, in order to receive more admiration, in order to receive more accolades. And none of it was fulfilling me, because I was not sacrificing the one thing that God was actually calling me to sacrifice, which was myself. These identities and these attachments to these worldly things that were keeping me stuck in mediocre, keeping me stuck in the middle of this rugged mountain. So I made a really strong choice at that period of my life, at that pivotal turning point of my life, where I had to decide, are you okay with having to dissociate, having to numb yourself with substances, having to people please and sacrifice your authentic self, with settling for mediocre? Or are you going to let go of this life of discontent, this life of complete discord where there's no peace, in order to fulfill God's promise of peace and prosperity for yourself by receiving His will for you, by letting go of your little plan, your little perfectly constructed plan of how your life's going to play out and all of the things that you think are going to bring you the peace and the prosperity. And you've tried that, and it's got you to this mediocre life where you're halfway up this rugged mountain and you're like, look how hard I fought to get here. Look how hard I fought. And now I'm here. I'm in the middle of the mountain. I'm at Mediocre. And so I'm just going to stay here. Even though God's like, but look at the rest of the mountain. Look at this summit that I'm asking you to climb, and you're going to have to let go of your base camp in Mediocre to get there. Are you willing to come with me? No. I'm good here. Yeah, I'm just going to numb myself out. I'm just going to like people please and deal with these relationships. I'm just going to like, zip my mouth and be a good girl and get my achievements and get my gold stars and like live my life from this heightened level of perfectionism where I feel like I have to mask up before I walk out the door, where I have to conform and be a chameleon and be who other people need me to be, because at the end of the day, that's getting me worldly success. That's getting me things that the world is saying, you're doing a great job, Dana. You're so amazing. And God was saying, yeah, but is that making you happy? Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? And I was like, no, no, I'm not. I'm discontent. I have no peace. And then I was called to listen to his will, not mine. And his will for me was to leave behind the comfort zones that I had built for myself, to be able to be padded in this little box of like, okay, I'm good, I'm in control, everything in my environment is controllable through manipulation, through numbing, through substance abuse. If I continue everything the way that I am, then I know what people's reaction to me is going to be. I know what the outcome is going to be, and so it's safe here. I had the illusion of control, that I was in control. And that illusion of control had led me to this base camp of Mediocre in the middle of this rugged mountain where everything was good enough, but I had complete discontent. There was no peace. This place is where most of us will stop. And it's because it's so uncomfortable to let go. It's because it's so uncomfortable to be honest with ourselves about where our beliefs are actually coming from. I wrote here, someone told you what you believe. Who are you listening to? If advice comes from an empty person, why don't we question it? Most of the advice that I had built my life around that led me to that point was coming from empty people. People whose fear was dripping on every word of advice that it is that they gave me. People who were not living the type of life that I desired to live. But I felt like if I just achieved this societal benchmark of what success was supposed to look like, I would finally have all of the peace that it was that I was searching for. And I had done it over and over again. I had achieved the degree, I had achieved the job, I had achieved the relationship, I had achieved the finances, I had achieved so many things, and yet they still were not giving me peace. And in this place, I realized recently, there's this beautiful passage, Proverbs 13, he who walks with wise men will be wise. And I realized that I had not been walking with wise men, but I had been expecting them to lead me to the summit of a mountain that they themselves had never climbed. And I had put my faith in people, things, achievements that were never going to give me what it is that I actually wanted. So if you're in this space where you are grappling with God, that's a perfect place to be. If you're there, there's a beautiful place for you to maybe find some reprieve, and it's inside of the Thrival membership. I just started devotional and Bible study there. And I've read the Bible before. I was raised in the church with my grandma, and I completely left the path. I got very into New Age spirituality. I was married to an atheist for several years. I had no faith other than in myself and my ability to manifest and control energy and to read signs from the universe. I was worshiping God's creation, not God himself. And it's only recently that I was deeply convicted, and I was shown all of the ways that I'm being called to more by God. And by being called to more, I was being asked to honor his will for me, not my own will for myself. And how it was going to require another death, another leaving of this middle of the rugged mountain that I had climbed myself to. And I was terrified. But I also knew that if I wanted the promise of peace and prosperity that he provided to me, I was going to have to trust that unfolding and that unfurling, and that I was going to have to let a lot of what I had created go. And that was exactly what happened. And I started to reread. And the reason I started to reread is because I was really deeply impacted by this beautiful woman named Lisa Harper. And I saw her at this event that I attended called Chosen at my church. And Lisa touched me because she's so relatable. And she's very honest in her humanity. She wasn't up on this pedestal like, I know more than you because I am in the scripture and I understand the word of God. No, she was very humble, and she had these really real experiences of life that I was deeply related to. I was like, yeah, I see myself in that. She was telling her stories, and I was so touched by how much kindness she saw in our Lord and Savior. And I had read the Bible, and I had seen this God who punished people, this God who was mean, who was punitive, who was like, you're bad, you're naughty, go to your room, and I'm going to punish you. I'm going to take away all of your toys. And that was how I really saw God growing up. And recently I started to reread with this lens and this perspective of seeing the benevolence of God in everything that it was that I was reading, in every aspect of his story. And it completely changed everything for me. It started to help me see how I had been seeking love in all of these places with the expectation that people, the world, was going to love me a certain way, and how much I had fallen in disappointment again and again and again when I was putting all of my faith in the world and in other people to love me and to see me for the gift that they hadn't given me. God had given me those gifts. God had given me that calling, and yet I was expecting others to love me the way that only he could. It was the stem of all of my daddy issues. It was the stem of my anxiety. It was the stem of my depression. It was the stem of the reason why I limited my own voice, why I was scared of sharing my opinion, why I was scared of speaking on certain topics. It was the root of my desire for invisibility while also longing to be seen. There was so much conflict that was happening because I was asking for unconditional love from a world and people and humanity, which is ultimately always based on conditions. And so I am on this journey, and I'm inviting you to come with me, of seeing the benevolence in our God, of seeing the truth of literally the keys to the kingdom that are right here in front of us to read. But so many people turn away from because of their own religious trauma, and I have that story too. And I want you to know that if you're grappling with God because of someone or something that happened to you, that's the perfect place to be, to come into this container. It's the perfect place to be, to come on this journey with me, because that is where all of us discover that distinction between the difference of God's will, God's sovereignty, and the free will that he has gifted us, that has led us to project certain aspects of wrongdoing from our past, from people, from pain, from hurt, from suffering that it is that we've been through, onto God. And my invitation is to come with me, to come on this journey of rereading with this lens of benevolence, this lens of kindness. Because if you are willing to see the grace that God has with you, the reason why he has given you the calling that he has given you, and how perfectly you are endowed with the spiritual gifts to achieve exactly that calling, your whole life will change. There is a level of confidence, a level of peace, a level of prosperity that is available to you when you let go of trying to control the world around you, trying to control people's perspective of you, trying to control people's reactions to you, the outcome of the things that it is that you are doing, and you walk with a new level of faith that is available to you. So come hang out with me inside of the Thrival community. This membership is open for enrollment. It's $88 a month. You get access to incredible pre-recorded programs, and we're going to start this devotional walk of rereading the Word together from front to back, and it's going to change your life. I promise. There's no way that it can't. And it's going to change your life for the better, because you're going to begin to see just how perfectly made you are to achieve the things that it is that God has planned for you. And how, from your limited current perspective of maybe being in the middle of that rugged mountain where you've come so far by kicking, fighting your way to this summit, that there's actually an easier way to start to climb to the next summit. There is a way where it isn't all in your hands, where there is not so much pressure, and you're not in this pressure cooker of trying to control every aspect of the journey, but instead you're being beautifully guided to a place that is beyond your current comprehension, because that's what's happened in my life. So I am a living testament to that being available. I did not think that the relationship that I have now with my family was possible 5 years ago. I did not think that the relationship that I have with my partner was possible 5 years ago. I did not think the relationship that I have with my business was possible 5 years ago. I thought that I needed to kick, scream, claw, fight, hustle my booty off to make all of those things happen. And God showed me that there was another way available to me that had far more ease and far more faith and far more peace and prosperity than the way that I was trying to do it for the majority of my life. And that's my invitation to you. So send me a DM saying Thrive. I'm happy to have that conversation with you about how we can move together forward and how you can start to embody exactly what I've just talked about inside of this live stream. I'm sending you a lot of love wherever you are in the world, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you for the love. I'll talk to you very soon.